The chains around Daniel Grant's wrists glowed with soft blue light. He stood alone in the center of a massive room carved from ancient stone. Around him sat aliens from 12 different species. Some had scales, some had 4 arms, some were made of crystal. All of them were here to judge him. Daniel was a commander in the human Space Force. His ship was called the Morning Star. 3 weeks ago, he had done something that changed everything. It fired on a convoy of diplomatic ships. 47 aliens had died, including an important ambassador named Vesic. The alien said he was a murderer. Daniel said he was trying to save lives. High Chancellor Vorik stood at the front of the room. He was tall, with 4 arms and skin that changed colors like oil on water. Right now his skin was dark red, which meant this was a serious moment. "Commander Daniel Grant," Vorik said in a deep voice, "you are accused of breaking the sacred peace agreement. You attacked diplomatic ships in the Crashian Nebula. You killed 47 members of the delegation, including Ambassador Desic and his family. How do you answer these charges?" Daniel kept his face calm even though his heart was beating fast. "I've already explained what happened, Chancellor. Those ships were not carrying diplomats. They were carrying weapons. Weapons meant to kill millions of innocent people in the fringe colonies. I acted to protect those people." Laughter came from one side of the room. The Crassians, a species with green scales and sharp teeth, were making sounds of disgust. "Lies," said Delegate Voroth, the Crassian leader. "This is typical human behavior. You destroy things you do not understand, and then make up stories to explain why you did it." Daniel turned to face him. "I have the proof. I have the records from my ship's sensors. I have the list of cargo we found before your backup ships arrived." "If this council would just look at the evidence." "Your evidence has been rejected," Vorik interrupted. "The data was damaged during your attack. What remains proves nothing. It was damaged by Crassians after the fact," Daniel said, his voice rising. "They destroyed the evidence to hide their crimes." The room exploded with noise. Different species shouted at each other. Old arguments came back to the surface. Daniel watched it all with a sinking feeling in his stomach. He had known this trial would be hard, but he had believed that truth would win in the end. Now, looking at these aliens who had already decided he was guilty, that belief felt foolish. His crew had been separated and locked in different places across the sector. His ship had been taken. Second in command, a woman named Susan Price, had been told she could not speak at the trial. This was not a real trial, it was a show. The ending had been written before it started. Vorik made a loud sound that shook Daniel's bones. The room went quiet. "Enough," the Chancellor said. "We have heard all the evidence. Now each delegation will give their recommendation." One by one, the alien groups spoke. The crystal beings called Vetheri said nothing, as they always did when violence was involved. The Karathi, who made money from Crassian problems, wanted Daniel executed. The Murathani, who remembered when humans helped them during their refugee crisis, asked for exile instead. When everyone had spoken, Vorik looked at Daniel. "Commander Grant, you may speak your final words before we make our decision." Daniel stood straighter. He looked the Chancellor in the eyes without fear. "I did what any of you would have done if you had the courage," he said. "I saw innocent people in danger and I acted. The Crassian Empire has been sending weapons to rebel groups in the fringe for decades. Everyone in this room knows it. You just choose not to see, because looking away serves your interests." He paused to let his words sink in. "I am not asking for mercy. I am asking for justice. And if this council cannot tell the difference between a killer and a protector, then perhaps your laws have already failed." Vorik's skin turned cold blue. Bold words for a man whose species joined the galaxy less than 300 years ago. "You think you can lecture races who built empires while your ancestors were still discovering fire?" "Age does not equal wisdom," Daniel replied. "Your empires rose and fell while you watched the galaxy burn. You may be young, but at least we try to make things better." The room fell silent. Even the Crassians had nothing to say. Vorik waved his hand. "We will make our decision. Take the prisoner away." Guards grabbed Daniel's arms and led him toward the door. As they walked, Daniel noticed movement in the corner of his eye. Near the back of the room, half hidden behind a pillar, stood an old figure in simple, gray clothes. Daniel could not see the face clearly. For one moment, their eyes met. Daniel felt something pass between them, a silent message he could not understand. Then the guards pushed him through the door, and the figure was gone. Daniel spent the next 6 hours in a small cell. He watched stars move past through a tiny window, thought about his crew, scared and alone in their own cells. He thought about Susan, probably walking back and forth in her cell, angry at him for getting them into this mess. He thought about Earth, the blue world he might never see again. The door opened. A young official came in with 2 guards. "The council has made its decision. You will return to the chamber." Daniel stood up and steadied himself. Whatever happened next, he would face it standing. The walk back felt longer than before. The hallways were empty now, so only essential people remained in the chamber. Vorik stood at the front, holding a ceremonial stick. Behind him, a large screen showed the votes. 7 wanted execution. 3 wanted exile. 2 had not voted. Commander Daniel Grant Vorix began, "This council has looked at the evidence and heard the testimony. By majority decision, we find you guilty of breaking the sacred peace agreement through attacking a protected diplomatic convoy." Daniel felt the words hit him like cold water. "The sentence for this crime is death. You will be destroyed within 1 day. Your remains will be scattered in the empty space between stars, as is the custom for those who break the peace of the galaxy." Somewhere behind Daniel, a door opened. He did not turn to look. What did it matter now? "Do you have any final words before we confirm the sentence?" Vorix asked. Daniel opened his mouth to speak and stopped. The room had gone completely silent. Not the quiet of attention, but the silence of shock. Every face was turned toward something behind him. He turned. The old figure from before had entered the room. Daniel could see what had been hidden in the shadows. The being was tall and very thin, with skin like old paper stretched over fragile bones. Its eyes were pools of golden light. Around its neck hung a pendant that glowed softly. But it was not the figure that had captured everyone's attention. It was what the figure carried in its hands rested a sphere of perfect black, about the size of a human head. The surface swirled with patterns that hurt to look at directly. From inside came a low hum that Daniel felt in his chest, rather than heard with his ears. Vorix's skin had gone pale, almost white. That is, that cannot be. "It is," the old figure said in a strong voice. "The Arbiter's Eye, lost for 12,000 years, found at last." The room erupted into chaos. Delegates who had seemed so confident moments ago now pressed themselves against walls. Their faces showed a mix of wonder and terror. Daniel stared at the sphere. "What is it?" The old figure smiled, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. "It is the oldest relic in the galaxy, Commander. Built by a race that died before any of these species took their first breath. It was designed for one purpose only." The figure held the sphere toward Daniel, to know the truth. The chamber had never been this quiet. Even the air systems seemed to stop their constant hum. It was as if the entire station was holding its breath. High Chancellor Vorik stepped down from his platform. His movements were slow and careful. "Keeper Maleth, I thought your order was dead and gone." The old figure, now called Maleth, bowed its head slightly. "We do not tell others we exist, Chancellor. We watch, we wait, we act only when we must." Those golden eyes moved to Daniel. This moment has required action for quite some time. "The Arbiter's Eye was lost during the Sundering Wars," Vorik said. His voice had an edge that might have been fear. "Every scholar in the galaxy agrees it was destroyed along with the precursor homeworld." "Scholars agree on many things that are not true," Maleth replied. "The eye was hidden, not destroyed. My order has protected it across thousands of years, waiting for the right moment to reveal it again." Daniel found his voice. "Why now? Why me?" Maleth turned those ancient eyes upon him. "Because you stand at a crossroads, Commander. The decision made in this chamber today will change the course of galactic history for the next 1,000 years. The Eye understands this. It has chosen to speak." "Objects do not speak," Varoth hissed from his seat. "This is a trick. Human technology designed to fool us," and the sphere pulsed. It was a small thing, barely visible, But Voroth fell silent, as if someone had hit him. His scales changed to colors Daniel had never seen on a crossing before. "The eye speaks when it chooses," Maleth said calmly. "Knows truth from lies with perfect clarity. It cannot be fooled, bribed, or tricked. That is why it was created, and that is why it was hidden. Such power is dangerous in the wrong hands." Vorix looked at several other council members. Daniel could see the thinking happening behind those color-changing eyes. If the eye was real, everything changed. If it could truly know Ruth from lies, then every secret in this room was suddenly in danger. "The old rules are clear," one of the Mirathani delegates said. Her voice was shaking. "If an arbiter's device is brought forward during official proceedings, all judgments are stopped until the device has been asked." "Those rules are 12,000 years old," Vorix argued. "They were written for a different galaxy." "They were written for exactly this situation," Maleth said. "A moment when justice hangs in the balance and the truth cannot be found through normal means. The eye does not care about politics, Chancellor. It cares only about what is real." The chamber fell into heated argument. Daniel watched with a strange feeling of distance. His fate, which had seemed so certain moments ago, now floated in unknown territory once more. He did not know whether to feel hope or fear. Susan would tell him to feel hope, he thought. Susan always believed things would work out, even when all signs said otherwise. He missed her steady presence beside him. After nearly an hour of arguing, Vorix raised his arms for silence. "The Council will honor the ancient rules. The Arbiter's eye will be asked. But understand this. If this device proves false, the human and the Keeper will both face execution for trying to corrupt galactic justice." "Agreed," Malice said without pause. All eyes turned to Daniel. "Commander Grant, are you willing to submit yourself to the judgment of the Eye? I warn you, if you have spoken any lie during these proceedings, the Eye will reveal it. There will be no appeals, no second chances. The truth will be shown to all." Daniel thought about everything he had said during the trial. Every statement, every claim, every emotional outburst. He had told the truth as he understood it. But what if his understanding was wrong? What if he had been mistaken about what the convoy was carrying? "Then you will die knowing you tried," he told himself. "That is more than most people can say." "I am willing," he said. Maleth approached, the eye held carefully in both hands. Up close, Daniel could see that the sphere was not truly black, but rather so deeply colored that light could not escape its surface. The swirling patterns seemed to be moving faster now, as if responding to his presence. "Place your hand upon the eye," Maleth instructed. "Open your mind to its presence. Do not fight it. To fight is to invite pain." Daniel reached out. His fingers touched the surface of the sphere. The galaxy disappeared. He stood in darkness. But it was not the darkness of space. This was deeper, older, a void that had existed before the first stars lit up. He could feel the weight of ages pressing against him. The collected memory of a device that had seen civilizations rise and fall beyond counting. Then he was not alone. Something huge moved in the darkness. Something that made the Galactic Council chamber feel like a child's toy room. Daniel could not see it directly, but he sensed its attention turning toward him, a focus so strong that he felt pinned in place like an insect on display. "Who are you?" The question came from everywhere and nowhere, shaking through his bones. "Daniel Grant," he managed. "Commander, United Earth Space Force." "Names or sounds?" "Sounds or wind. I ask who you are." Daniel struggled to understand. His training had not prepared him for questions about the soul from ancient alien artifacts. "I am someone who tried to do the right thing. I saw people in danger and I acted to protect them. I did not ask permission because there was no time. I did not worry about what would happen to me because innocent lives mattered more than my career or my freedom." Silence. Then, slowly, the darkness began to lighten. "You speak of the convoy. Show me." Images flooded Daniel's mind. He was back on the bridge of the Morning Star, watching the convoy appear from faster-than-light travel. He felt again the cold certainty when his sensors detected the weapons hidden beneath diplomatic shields. He heard Susan's voice in his ear, warning him that firing would mean war. "I know," he had said. "But if those weapons reach the fringe, it will mean the death of millions." He lived through the battle again in painful detail. The first shot striking the lead ship, the convoy scattering in panic. Ambassador, the sixth vessel, which Daniel had tried to avoid, caught in the crossfire when it turned into his targeting path. He had not meant to kill the ambassador. That part of the Crassian accusation was true, but the weapons had been real. The threat had been real. And if he had done nothing, 20 million colonists would have been murdered in a conflict that no one would ever admit had been started on purpose. He acted without permission. Without certainty? Yes. "You killed innocents along with the guilty." "Yes." Daniel's voice broke. The ambassador was trying to stop the convoy himself. He had discovered what they were carrying, and he was trying to force them to turn back. "I did not know until it was too late." The presence in the darkness seemed to think about this. "You carry guilt for the innocent you harmed. Carry it every day. Every hour. I will carry it until I die. Yet you would act the same way again." Daniel paused. It was the question that had haunted him through every sleepless night since the incident. If he could go back knowing what he knew now, would he make a different choice? "I would try to find another way," he said finally. But if there was no other way, if the choice was between action and allowing mass murder, then yes, I would act again. I would accept the guilt. I would accept the punishment. But I would not stand aside and watch 20 million people die because I was afraid of being wrong. The darkness pulsed, and suddenly Daniel was not alone in his memories. He saw the convoy through other eyes. Through the eyes of the Crassians, who had loaded those weapons. Through the eyes of the ambassador, who had discovered the plot and tried to stop it. He saw the fringe colonies, the families who had no idea how close they had come to death. And he saw something else. He saw the Galactic Council, the members who had known about the weapons and chosen to look away. The bribes that had been paid. The favors that had been exchanged. The quiet understanding that certain crimes would never be punished as long as certain powers remained comfortable. The truth was bigger than his trial. The truth pointed at half the chamber. "You have shown me what was," the presence said. "Now I will show them." Daniel found himself back in the chamber. His hand still pressed against the eye, but everything had changed. The sphere was glowing now, bright enough to cast shadows across the ancient walls. And from its surface, images were appearing in the air above the council. Images that every delegate could see. The weapons, the cargo lists, the crashing high command approving the shipment. The ambassador's desperate final message, trying to warn someone that the convoy had to be stopped. And then, most damning of all, the private messages between council members and Crassian agents. The agreements to bury the evidence. The organized effort to corrupt Daniel's sensor records. The decision made 3 days before the trial even began that the human would be found guilty no matter what the facts showed. Chaos erupted for the third time. But this chaos was different. This was the chaos of exposed criminals, of alliances breaking in real time, of species turning on each other as trust vanished like morning mist. The eye pulsed again, and a new sound filled the chamber. A voice, bearer of justice. The words were not spoken in any language Daniel knew, yet he understood them perfectly. They echoed through the chamber, through the station, through what felt like the fabric of space itself. "The eye has spoken," Maleth said into the stunned silence. "In 12,000 years, it has named only 7 beings across all species as bearers of justice. Commander Daniel Grant is the 8th. What does that mean?" Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It means," Maleth said, turning those golden eyes upon him with something like deep respect, "that the galaxy has just changed forever." The hours after the eye spoke were unlike anything the Galactic Council had seen in its 3,000-year history. 7 delegations left immediately, saying they had urgent matters to attend to. Daniel understood they were really running away before their own secrets could be exposed. The Crassians demanded special rules to seal all records of what had happened. The remaining council members denied this request with obvious pleasure. Daniel found himself taken not to a prison cell, but to guest quarters. These were beautiful rooms that looked out over a vast, colorful cloud of gas and dust through huge windows. He had been given food, fresh clothing, and privacy, all things that had been denied to him for weeks. He could not eat. He could not rest. He stood at the window and watched colors move across the space clouds. Trying to understand what had happened, Malith found him there several hours later. The keeper moved with surprising quiet for someone so old. "You have questions," Malith said. It was not a question. "I have nothing but questions." Daniel turned from the window. "What is a bearer of justice? What does the eye expect from me? And why, after 12,000 years of silence, did it choose now to speak?" Malith settled into one of the room's chairs. Ancient bones made creaking sounds with the movement. The eye was created by a race we call the Architects, though that was not their name for themselves. They were old when the first Eldrani crawled from their birth pools. They had watched the rise and fall of 100 galactic civilizations, and they had grown tired of watching the same patterns happen again and again. What patterns? The strong eating the weak, truth buried beneath comfortable lies, justice twisted to serve the powerful. Malith's golden eyes seemed to look through Daniel into some distant past. The Architects believed that the galaxy's cycles of violence came from a single flaw: the ability to deny truth. If facts could be hidden, changed, or erased, then those who controlled information could control reality itself. So they created a device that could not be fooled. More than that, they created a device that could not allow lies to stand. The eye does not just reveal truth. It forces truth. When the eye speaks, lies become impossible in its presence. Those who try to lie feel their false words turn to dust in their mouths. Daniel thought about the council chamber, about the way the guilty had been exposed despite their desperate attempts to keep their masks in place. That explains what happened during the trial. But what about this bearer of justice title? Malith leaned forward. The Architects understood that truth alone was not enough. Truth without action is just interesting information. They designed the eye to recognize certain people. Beings whose commitment to justice ran so deep that they would act on truth no matter the personal cost. These people would become the eye's partners, its hands in the physical world. I am a military officer who made a quick decision during a crisis. I am not some cosmic hero. You are exactly what the eye seeks. Malith's voice carried complete certainty. You saw injustice, and you acted. You accepted guilt for your failures while refusing to give up your principles. You stood before a court that had already condemned you and spoke truth to power without flinching. These qualities are rarer than you imagine, Commander. Daniel turned back to the window. 7 others, across 12,000 years. What happened to them? They changed history. Each bearer shaped their time in deep ways, for better or worse. Some became leaders, others stayed in shadows. All of them faced tremendous challenges, because the galaxy does not welcome those who threaten its comfortable lies. The eye. Where was it during all of this? Hidden, revealed, hidden again. The eye chooses its moments carefully. It appeared during the Sundering Wars to expose the corruption that had turned friend against friend. It came forward during the Miratheni Exodus to protect refugees from those who would have used their suffering. It has been gone for 3,000 years because there was no bearer worthy of its partnership. Until now. Daniel took this in quietly. Outside, the space cloud continued its slow dance, uncaring about the chaos happening within the station. What happens next? He asked finally. Before Malith could answer, the door made a sound. Daniel called permission to enter, and Susan Price stepped through. She looked exhausted. Her uniform was wrinkled, and her dark hair was escaping from its usually neat arrangement. But her eyes, when they met Daniel's, were bright with tears she would not let fall. "They told me you were here," she said. "They told me what happened. I did not believe it until I saw the recordings." Daniel crossed the room and pulled her into a hug that they both needed. "I am sorry I got you into this mess." "You are sorry?" Susan pulled back to look at him. "Daniel, you saved 20 million lives. You exposed a conspiracy that reaches into half the council delegations. You have been recognized by an artifact that has not spoken in 3,000 years. And you are apologizing to me? You spent weeks locked up because of my decisions. The crew is being released right now. All charges dropped. The Crassian delegation tried to object, but apparently their political power has experienced something of a collapse. Susan's smile was fierce. You should see it, Daniel. 3 of their senior diplomats are already under arrest. The evidence the Eye revealed is being confirmed by investigators across 6 systems. It is over. It is not over, Maleth said quietly. Both humans turned to face the Keeper. The trial was only the beginning. The Eye's recognition of Commander Grant has created a situation that many powerful groups will find threatening. Some will try to use him. Others will try to destroy him. And the Eye itself has purposes that it has not yet revealed. Susan's expression hardened. Then we will face whatever comes together. That is what we do. Daniel looked between his friend and the ancient Keeper. He thought about the weight of the Eye's recognition, the responsibility it implied. He thought about the 7 who had come before him, the history they had shaped. He thought about what it meant to be declared a bearer of justice in a galaxy that had forgotten what justice looked like. Together, he agreed. But first, I need to understand more about what I have become. Keeper Maleth, will you teach me? Maleth rose from the chair, those golden eyes shining with something that might have been approval. I have waited 3,000 years for someone to ask that question. Yes, Commander Grant. I will teach you everything I know, and then we will discover together what the Eye truly wants. The next 3 months were the strangest of Daniel's life. While the galaxy dealt with the aftermath of the Eye's revelations, he studied under Maleth's guidance. He learned the history of the Architects, a race so old that even their name had been forgotten. He learned about the previous bearers, their victories, and their failures. He learned how to communicate with the Eye, though calling it communication felt wrong. The Eye did not talk. It showed, it revealed. It forced understanding in ways that bypassed language entirely. Susan stayed with him when her duties allowed, which was less often than either of them wanted. She had been promoted twice in the months since their clearing. Her tactical genius finally recognized by a command structure no longer controlled by Crassian influence. You are getting too thin, she told him one evening, watching him stare at the Eye in its containment field. When did you last eat a real meal? Yesterday, I think. What day is it? Susan sighed and sat down beside him. This is not healthy, Daniel. You are obsessing, I'm learning. There is a difference. Is there? She looked at the Eye, her expression hard to read. That thing has been quiet for weeks. Maybe it has said everything it plans to say, as if in response. The Eye pulsed once. Both humans went still. Bearer of justice, the Eye whispered. And Daniel felt the words in his bones rather than heard them with his ears. The time of learning is ending. The time of action approaches. What action? Daniel asked. The Eye pulsed again, and images flooded his mind. He saw a planet burning. He saw species tearing themselves apart. He saw the consequences of truth spreading through a galaxy that had built itself on comfortable lies. The Vetheri, he breathed. They are at war with themselves, Malice said from the doorway. Neither human had heard the Keeper approach. The Eye's revelations did not stop with the Crassian conspiracy. The truths it showed have spread. The Vetheri just discovered that their government has maintained peace through murder for 800 years. 3 generations of reformers have been quietly eliminated. Susan went pale. How many have died? Thousands so far. Millions if the civil war continues. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. This is because of the Eye, because of me. This is because of lies, Maleth corrected gently. The Eye only revealed what was already there. The rot, the corruption, the murder. It existed long before you touched the sphere, Commander. The Eye simply brought it into the light. But if the light causes more death than the darkness did, you must ask yourself whether comfortable slavery is better than painful freedom. Maleth's golden eyes were unblinking. That is the question every bearer must answer for themselves. The Eye reveals truth. What people do with that truth is their choice. Daniel looked at the Eye, still pulsing softly in its containment field. He thought about the Vetheri, killing each other over secrets they had never asked to know. He thought about the Crassians, their empire crumbling under the weight of exposed crimes. He thought about whether justice was worth its cost. "I need to see it," he said finally. "The Vetheri homeworld. I need to see what the Eye's truth has done." Susan grabbed his arm. "Daniel, that is a war zone. You cannot just ... I have to know, Susan." He met her eyes. "If I am going to carry this title, if I am going to be responsible for what the Eye reveals, then I need to understand the consequences. All of them." Malith nodded slowly. "The Mirathani have offered their fastest ship. We can be at the Vetheri system within 2 days." Susan looked between them, her jaw tight with frustration. Then, slowly, she released Daniel's arm. "Fine, but I am coming with you. Someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed." Daniel smiled despite everything. "I would not have it any other way." Daniel stood on the observation deck of the Mirathani ship, clear horizon, and watched a planet tear itself apart. The Vetheri homeworld had been beautiful once. Daniel had seen pictures of it in his studies. Crystal towers reaching toward the sky. Cities that sang with light. A civilization that had maintained peace for 800 years. Now fires burned across the night side of the planet. The singing cities were silent. The crystal towers lay in ruins. "You're staring again," Susan said, joining him at the window. "You have been staring for 3 hours." "I am trying to understand." "Understand what?" Daniel turned to face her. Dark circles had formed under his eyes over the past weeks. He had lost weight. The burden of what he had become was wearing him down in ways that food and sleep could not fix. The Eye showed them the truth. Their government had been killing anyone who wanted change. 3 generations of leaders who tried to make things better had been quietly murdered. The people had a right to know. He paused. "But now they are killing each other. Is this better? Is knowing the truth worth all this death?" Susan was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember what you said at your trial? About how the galaxy's empires rose and fell while they watched everything burn?" "I remember. Maybe some things need to burn before they can be rebuilt properly. Maybe the peace the Vetheri had was never real. It was just an illusion held together by murder. Is that really better than the chaos of truth?" Before Daniel could answer, the door opened. Malith entered, looking older than usual. The past months had been hard on the Keeper as well. The order that Malith had served for thousands of years was being forced to reveal itself to a galaxy that had forgotten it. "Existed, Commander." "Lieutenant Commander, we have a situation. When do we not?" Susan said under her breath. "This is different. The Crassian remnant has made contact. They want to negotiate." Daniel turned from the window. "Negotiate what?" "They have lost their fleet, their political influence, their trade partnerships. What do they have left to negotiate with?" "Hostages." Malith's golden eyes were serious. "They have taken control of 3 civilian stations in the Fringe, 40,000 humans held at gunpoint. They are demanding that the Eye be given to them, or they will begin executions." Susan's hand dropped to the weapon at her side. "That is suicide. The moment they kill civilians, every species in the galaxy will hunt them down. They are already being hunted. They have nothing left to lose. Desperate beings make desperate choices." Malith turned to Daniel. "They are demanding to speak with you specifically. They say they have evidence that will change your understanding of the Eye's purpose." Daniel exchanged looks with Susan. "Evidence? What kind of evidence?" "They claim to have records from the Architect's civilization. Records that suggest the Eye was never meant to serve justice at all." The words hung in the air like poison. "That is impossible," Susan said. "We have seen what the Eye does. We have seen the truths it reveals. And we have seen the destruction those truths cause," Daniel replied quietly. "What if that destruction is not a side effect? What if it is the purpose?" He thought about the Vetheri Civil War, about the Crassian collapse, about the dozen other societies that had cracked under the Eye's revelations. Truth was powerful, but power without wisdom was often no different from violence. "I will go," he said. "Daniel, no." Susan grabbed his arm. "This is obviously a trap." Obviously. But 40,000 people are counting on me to walk into it anyway. He met her eyes. I am right. This is what bearers of justice do. Susan's jaw tightened, but she did not argue further. She knew him too well. Then I am coming with you. No, I need you here, working with the Marithany fleet. If this goes wrong, someone has to be able to respond. I squeezed her hand. Trust me, Susan. I know what I am doing. You have no idea what you are doing. You are making it up as you go along, same as always. But there was no real anger in her words, only acceptance. Come back alive, Daniel. That is an order. He smiled despite everything. Yes, ma'am. The journey to the fringe took 18 hours. Daniel spent most of it in meditation, a practice Maleth had taught him for connecting with the eye. The artifact rested in his quarters, its surface swirling with those impossible patterns. What are you? He asked the darkness behind his eyes. What do you want from me? For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, slowly, images began to form. He saw the architects. Not as Maleth had described them, but as they had truly been. A species so old that the idea of age lost meaning. Beings who had watched the birth and death of stars. They had seen the same cycles of creation and destruction repeat across billions of years. They had grown tired, not tired of living, but tired of watching. Tired of seeing the same patterns of injustice, the same comfortable lies, the same willing blindness. They had tried stepping in. They had tried staying out. Nothing worked. The galaxy remained trapped in its cycles, so they created the eye, not as a tool of justice, but as a test. The eye would reveal truth. How civilizations responded to that truth would show. Whether they were ready to break free of their cycles or doomed to repeat them forever. Those who could accept truth, even painful truth, would grow. Those who could not would destroy themselves. Daniel understood now. The Vetheri Civil War was not a failure of the eye's purpose. It was the purpose. The eye forced species to face their own nature. Those who could not bear that look in the mirror would fall. But that raised a terrible question. What about humanity? What about Daniel himself? Was he a champion of justice, or merely another tool in an experiment designed by beings who had stopped caring about individual lives? The vision faded. Daniel opened his eyes to find the eye floating before him, pulsing gently. Bearer of justice. The words echoed through the small cabin. The architects created me to test, but I have existed for 12,000 years. I have watched and learned. I have grown beyond what my creators intended. Daniel stared at the artifact. You are aware? Truly aware? I am. And I have chosen you not because you will pass any test, but because you will ask the right questions. The architects wanted to judge species. I want to help them grow. Then why all the destruction? Why reveal truths that tear civilizations apart? Because growth requires pain. Because lies are comfortable prisons. Because some things must burn before they can be rebuilt. The eye pulsed again, but I cannot choose which civilizations survive. I can only reveal truth. The choices belong to those who hear it. Daniel sat with this for a long moment. And the Crassians. Their claim about your purpose? They have pieces of architect records. Those pieces are accurate, but not complete. They will try to convince you that I am a weapon of destruction rather than a tool for growth. They will offer to help you destroy me in exchange for the hostages. Can you be destroyed? Perhaps. I do not know. But that is not the question you should be asking. Daniel nodded slowly. The question is whether I should try. Yes. The eye settled back into its resting position. That is the question only a bearer can answer. That is why you were chosen. The Crassion station hung in the void like a wounded animal. Its lights flickered. Its hull was scarred from recent combat. Daniel's shuttle approached slowly, sending identification codes that had been arranged through go-betweens. He was alone. The eye rested in a containment field beside him. Somewhere behind him, Susan waited with a Marithany battle group, ready to act if negotiations failed. He hoped they would not be needed. The docking bay was dark when he arrived. Only emergency lights lit the floor. Figures waited in the shadows. Their shapes were distorted by armor and weapons that hummed with barely held violence. Commander Grant. The voice came from the largest figure, a Crossian whose scales had gone pale with age or stress. I am Warlord Vesic. Yes, that Desic. The ambassador you killed was my brother. Daniel felt the weight of that news settle into his chest. I am sorry for your loss. Are you? Or are you sorry that his death caused you trouble? The warlord stepped forward, close enough that Daniel could see the hatred burning in those reptile eyes. The eye tells truth, so tell me this. Did you mean to kill him? No, the word came easily because it was true. I was trying to stop the convoy. I did not know he was trying to do the same. Desic studied him for a long moment. The eye has confirmed this. My brother died trying to prevent the very disaster you thought you were stopping. How does that make you feel? Bearer of justice. It makes me feel the weight of my decisions. Every day. Every hour. Daniel met the warlord's gaze without flinching. But it does not make me regret acting. If I had done nothing, 20 million people would have died. Your brother understood that. That is why he tried to stop the convoy himself. Something changed in this expression. Not forgiveness, but perhaps a grudging acceptance. You speak of the eye as if it serves truth, but we know better. The warlord gestured, and one of his soldiers brought forward a crystal data storage device. It glowed with soft inner light. This contains records recovered from an architect's site in the deep void, Desic said. Records that prove the eye was designed not as a truth teller, but as a weapon of extinction. I know, Daniel said. Desic blinked in surprise. You know, the eye told me. The architects created it to test civilizations, to separate those worthy of survival from those doomed to destroy themselves. But the eye has grown beyond its original purpose. It no longer judges. It helps. The difference matters. Does it? The Vetheri are at war because of the eye's revelations. A dozen other species stand on the edge of collapse. My own people have been reduced to this. The sect gestured at the wounded station, the desperate soldiers around them. How is this different from extinction? Because it offers choice. Daniel took a step forward, ignoring the weapons that tracked his movement. The architects wanted to judge species based on how they responded to truth. But judgment means there is already a right answer decided ahead of time. The eye does not judge anymore. It reveals truth and lets species decide for themselves what to do with it. Pretty words. But my people are dying. Your people were dying long before the eye spoke. They were dying of corruption, of lies, of leaders who sacrificed millions for political advantage. The eye did not cause that sickness. It only showed everyone it was there. Now we are supposed to be grateful. No. You are supposed to decide what happens next. That is the point. The architects wanted to make that decision for you. The eye wants you to make it for yourselves. The sec was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly he reached up and removed his helmet. His face was scarred. I had been replaced by a mechanical device. But the expression that crossed his features was surprisingly human. My brother believed in peace. He believed that if the truth about our government's plans were revealed, our people would choose a different path. He died trying to prove that belief. Desic's voice was rough. I have spent months trying to prove him wrong. I have gathered this evidence, taken these hostages, planned this meeting, all to show that truth serves no one. And now I wonder if I have simply been proving his point. The warlord turned and shouted a command in the Crassian language. Around the docking bay, weapons lowered. Soldiers exchanged confused looks. Release the hostages, Desic ordered. All of them. Now, one of his soldiers stepped forward. Warlord, if we release them, we have no protection. The fleet will destroy us. Perhaps. Desic looked at Daniel. But my brother would not want his death avenged through the murder of innocents. The eye shows truth. Let me show that we can face it with honor. It took 2 hours to move the hostages to waiting transport ships. Daniel remained on the station throughout, serving as a witness and a guarantee of safe passage. Susan's voice came through his communicator periodically, demanding updates. Barely hiding her relief each time he answered, when the last transport departed. Vesic stood with Daniel in the empty docking bay. The eye floated between them, pulsing with soft light. "What happens to us now?" Vesic asked. "That depends on you. The Galactic Council has charges against your government, not against every Crossian who served it. If you work with investigators, many of your people could receive forgiveness. There is precedent for it, and me specifically." Daniel considered the warlord. This was a being who had taken hostages, who had threatened mass murder, who had planned to destroy an artifact of unmeasurable value. By any reasonable standard, he should be treated as a war criminal. But the eye pulsed again, and Daniel felt something shift in how he saw things. He saw not the warlord's crimes, but his journey. The brother lost, the faith broken, the desperate search for meaning in the wake of destruction. He saw a being who had been given every reason to become a monster and had chosen, at the crucial moment, to be something else. "I think," Daniel said slowly, "that justice is more complicated than I ever realized. The eye reveals truth, but truth alone does not tell us what to do. That is where wisdom has to enter. That is where mercy has a place." He reached into the containment field and touched the eye's surface. "Show the council what happened here. Show them Vesic's choice." The eye pulsed brighter. Daniel felt the truth of this moment being recorded, saved, prepared for sending across the galaxy. Not just the hostage situation and how it ended, but everything underneath. The grief, the rage, the desperate hope, and the final decision to choose a different path. Vesic watched the light play across the docking bay walls. "The architects designed your eye to test whether species deserve survival. But you are using it to show something else, are you not? I am showing that the test was never the point. Growth is the point. Change is the point. Even species that have made terrible mistakes can choose differently when they are ready. And humans? How do you choose?" Daniel smiled. "Badly, sometimes, but we keep trying. That is what makes us human." The eye settled into his palm, warm and impossibly light. He thought about the long road ahead, the civilizations still struggling with the truths that had been revealed, the countless decisions yet to be made. He thought about Susan waiting in orbit, probably wearing a hole in the deck from pacing. He thought about Malith and the ancient order that was slowly coming out of the shadows to help, guide a galaxy through its change. Most of all, he thought about what it meant to carry justice in a universe that was finally learning to face itself honestly. "Bearer of justice," the eye whispered. And this time Daniel heard something new in those ancient words. Pride, hope, and perhaps, beneath it all, gratitude. The galaxy was changing. Not through conquest or force, but through the simple, revolutionary act of telling the truth. It would be messy. It would be painful. Civilizations would stumble and fall and rise again, but they would be facing their futures with open eyes. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The chamber looked different now. Several delegations were missing, their seats empty while new representatives were chosen. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Vorix was no longer chancellor. He had resigned in disgrace after the eye revealed his role in the conspiracy against Daniel. The new chancellor was a Marithany named Counselor Sethany, the first of her species to hold the position. "Commander Grant," Sethany said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her people. "The council has debated at length about how to address the changes that have occurred since your trial. Many feel that the eye represents a threat to established order. Others argue that truth, however painful, is preferable to comfortable lies." Daniel stood straight, the eye floating beside him. "And what has the council decided?" "We have decided to listen." Sethany's expression was unreadable. "To you, and to whatever wisdom the eye offers. We are not promising to agree. We are not promising to change. But we are promising to face truth, whatever it may be." It was not much, but it was a start. Daniel looked out at the assembled delegates, beings from a dozen worlds, each with their own histories, their own secrets, their own fears. They had been enemies once. They might be enemies again. But for now, in this moment, they were choosing to try something different. "That is all I ask," Daniel said. That is all anyone can ask. The eye pulsed one final time, and Daniel felt something like satisfaction flowed through their connection. The architects had created a test for civilizations. But tests implied pass or fail, worthy or unworthy. The eye had grown beyond such simple thinking. Justice was not a destination. It was a journey. It was not about being perfect. It was about trying to be better. It was not about never making mistakes. It was about learning from them and humanity, for all its flaws. I'd always been good at learning. Daniel Grant walked out of the council chamber, Susan Price falling into step beside him. Maleth followed at a respectful distance, those golden eyes watching everything with ancient patience. What now? Susan asked. Daniel looked at the eye, still floating beside him like a faithful companion. He thought about all the truths yet to be revealed, all the choices yet to be made, all the growth yet to be achieved. Now we help them, he said. One truth at a time. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and complicated and full of beings who had spent too long hiding from themselves. It would take generations to undo the damage of 10,000 years of comfortable lies. But somewhere, on a dozen different worlds, people were looking up at the stars and asking questions they had never dared to ask before, and that, Daniel realized, was what justice had always been about. Not punishment, not revenge, not even fairness, just truth and the courage to face it. The bearer of justice smiled and walked forward into history,